It started with a fork clink. Not dramatic, not at first. Just a casual Thursday night. A plate of roasted salmon, 2 glasses of wine, and the scent of lemon and dill still lingering in the air. Amy set her fork down deliberately, as if she'd rehearsed the moment, and said the words like they belonged in a TED Talk. "I've been reading a lot about polyamory," she said. "I think it could strengthen our bond." The silence that followed was immediate and electric. I looked up from my plate, watching her fold her napkin with unnecessary precision. Her voice had that rehearsed calmness, the tone people use when pitching a business idea or asking for a raise. Not when dismantling monogamy. "Expand our horizons," she added, like she was selling a yoga retreat. I didn't say anything right away. I just watched her. Her eyes flickered to mine, testing the waters, then darted to her wine glass. That told me everything. She was already seeing someone, maybe not physically, but emotionally. She was gone. This wasn't a suggestion. It was a confession wrapped in academic language. I imagined what she expected from me. Resistance. Confusion. Maybe anger. A dramatic, "What the hell are you talking about?" So she could play the calm, liberated soul, the one trying to rescue our marriage from its traditional chains. Instead, I smiled. A slow, warm smile that caught her completely off guard. "Great," I said, picking up my wine. "Because our neighbor Stephanie has been waiting for this." Her fork slipped from her hand, clattered against the plate. She stared at me, blinking slowly like the words hadn't registered. A crack formed in her composure. Her lips parted to say something, but nothing came out. It was the first time in years I'd seen her caught off guard, and it was glorious. "I'm sorry," she finally managed. "You heard me," I said, still smiling. "Stephanie. 2 doors down. You remember her, long legs, soft laugh, always gardening in those tight tank tops?" Amy flushed. "You're not serious." "Oh, I am. You want polyamory, right? No judgment, no jealousy? Sounds like freedom to me." She opened her mouth again, but closed it quickly. Her hand went to her wine glass, fingers tightening around the stem. The fork lay forgotten on the plate. "Amy," I said gently, "if we're going to expand our horizons, then we should both have a say in the direction. It's only fair." You think this is some kind of joke?" she asked, her voice tight now. There it was, the edge beneath the surface. The loss of control. "No, not at all," I said. "I think it's brilliant. Empowering, even. I mean, isn't that what you wanted?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for her phone like it was a life raft. Maybe to text someone. Maybe him. The mystery man behind her sudden spiritual awakening. I watched her thumb hover over the screen, then pull back. She was rattled. Good. The truth is, Amy had been growing distant for months. Subtle things, less laughter, more locked phones, new lingerie that never made it to our bedroom, a gym membership that became late nights at yoga, and a new interest in wine tastings she never invited me to. I wasn't blind. I was just patient. So when she tried to dress her cheating in progressive rhetoric, I didn't flinch. She wanted a conversation about ethical non-monogamy. She wanted to redefine our emotional parameters. But really, she just wanted to sleep with someone else and feel righteous doing it. Well, two can play that game. "I didn't mean this to be a weapon," she said after a while, her voice quieter. "I meant for us to explore together, to build something new." "Then let's build," I said, "brick by brick. You do your thing, I'll do mine. And maybe, just maybe, we'll meet in the middle." She gave a short, incredulous laugh, but it lacked conviction. She was losing her grip on the narrative. For the first time in a long while, I held the steering wheel. The rest of the dinner was a standoff disguised as small talk. She asked about work. I complimented the salmon. We didn't talk about Stephanie again, not directly, but the name hung between us like perfume. Sweet, lingering, dangerous. Later, in bed, Amy turned her back to me without saying goodnight. I stared at the ceiling, adrenaline still humming under my skin. The game had begun, and she had no idea how unprepared she was for what came next. Stephanie wasn't just a fantasy. She was a promise. And Amy? She'd just opened a door she couldn't close. The sun rose the next morning like nothing had changed. But it had. Amy was already gone by the time I came downstairs. Her untouched coffee sat on the counter, just the way she liked it, oat milk and a whisper of cinnamon. She'd left without saying a word. A strategic silence, I guessed. The kind that carries more weight than shouting. If she thought her disappearing act would unnerve me, She didn't know how steady I'd become overnight. Because for the first time in a long while, I felt clear, cold, alive. I stood by the kitchen window with my mug, watching the neighborhood stretch itself awake. Sprinklers rotated lazily. A jogger passed with earbuds in and a tight, rhythmic stride. A lawn mower hummed a few doors down. Then I saw her, Stephanie, 2 houses to the right, kneeling in the garden that edged her white picket fence, gloved hands deep in the soil. The sun hit her just right, casting a soft halo across her back. Her tank top clung to her like it was made for that moment, gray cotton, damp at the lower back. Her auburn hair was messy, pulled into one of those buns that looked casual but took effort. She leaned forward, planting something. Lilies, I think, and the curve of her waist did things to me I hadn't let myself acknowledge until now. I walked outside before I could think twice, crossing my yard and casually leaning against the fence. She didn't look up right away. "Morning," I called. Stephanie glanced over her shoulder, squinting into the light. Her lips curled into a slow, unmistakable smile. Not polite, not surprised, just knowing. Well, she said, wiping her brow with the back of her wrist. "Thought you'd never come around." I blinked. "Come around." She stood and peeled off her gloves, letting them dangle from one hand. Her eyes met mine, a hazel so rich it almost looked gold in the morning sun. "You and Amy," she said, stepping closer to the fence. "Been watching the 2 of you for years. Always thought, he doesn't look like the kind of guy who knows he's being neglected." Her words stopped me cold. She wasn't dancing around anything. No coy games. Just truth, blunt and hot. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Funny. Amy said she wants to explore polyamory." Stephanie tilted her head, amused. "Now that's convenient timing." She framed it like a gift, I added. "Strengthening the bond, expanding our horizons, all that crap." Stephanie let out a low, smoky laugh. "And how long has she been fucking whoever she's doing yoga with?" I raised my eyebrows. "You don't mince words." "Life's short," she said, shrugging. "And I don't like pretending I don't see things." Something crackled between us, like dry leaves catching flame. Not lust, not yet. It was older than that. Stored. Waiting. I realized then that Stephanie had always been aware of me. The way she waved when I was mowing the lawn. The conversations that lasted longer than they needed to. The time she loaned Amy her book club's copy of The Ethical Slut and winked when she handed it over. She hadn't been waiting on Amy. She'd been waiting on me. "So," she said, brushing soil from her hands. "Are we actually doing this? Or was that just a clever line at dinner?" I didn't answer right away. I let the moment hang, stretched taut between us. My mind went back to last night. Amy's shock, her composure cracking. And now, here was Stephanie, standing barefoot in the grass with dirt under her nails and mischief in her eyes, offering something that felt both dangerous and undeniable. I meant what I said. I told her. Stephanie leaned against the fence now, close enough I could smell the citrus from whatever lotion she used. "Then let me make something clear," she said. "If this is about revenge, I'm not interested. I'm not some weapon in a war between you 2. I nodded slowly. "It's not about revenge. It's about honesty." Her smile widened. "Good. Because if this happens, it's going to be real. No hiding, no sneaking, and definitely no apologies." My pulse throbbed in my neck. This wasn't fantasy anymore. This was declaration. "I think," I said, "it's already real." Her eyes searched mine for a beat. Then she stepped back, just slightly. "I've got wine," she said. "Come over tonight. 7. Then she turned and walked away, hips swaying just enough to let me know she knew I was still watching. Back inside, I sat on the edge of the couch and let the silence of the house press in around me. Amy's absence no longer felt like loss. It felt like vacancy, a sign something better was about to move in. Stephanie hadn't been shocked. She hadn't even flinched. It was like she'd been keeping the door open with her foot all this time, waiting for someone to finally step through. All those glances, those lingering conversations, the way her eyes lingered just a second too long. It had all meant something. I'd just been too loyal, or too blind, to act on it. Until now. The rules of the game had changed. And Stephanie? She'd already been playing. Amy didn't say a word about our fence line conversation that evening. In fact, she avoided looking at me altogether. Her eyes flicked toward me over the rim of her wine glass once, calculating, like she was still trying to decide if I'd been bluffing. I hadn't. She wanted polyamory. She wanted the freedom. Now, she was going to choke on it. I watched her pace the kitchen, barefoot, texting someone with an energy I hadn't seen in months. Probably him. The yoga guy, or whoever had convinced her that love needed terms and contracts. Her little new chapter plan was already coming undone, and I hadn't even touched Stephanie yet. But that was about to change. Let's have Stephanie over tomorrow, I said casually. Amy froze mid-step. She turned slowly, setting her phone down a little too quickly. Why? For drinks. To talk. You said we should do this together, right? Explore. Connect. Seems like the perfect place to start. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You're seriously pursuing this? I gave her the same smile I had at dinner. Calm. Cool. Controlled. You opened the door, Amy. I'm just walking through it with style. I could see the calculation behind her eyes. A storm of thoughts she didn't want to say out loud. She thought I'd resist, maybe beg for her to stay, to stop. Instead, I was hosting the woman she least wanted to acknowledge. Fine, she said finally, her voice clipped. Tomorrow. Stephanie showed up at 7:01 the next evening. Punctual. Polished. Dangerous. She wore a black sundress that hugged her in all the right ways, flowing enough to be innocent, cut low enough to make Amy twitch. Her hair was swept over one shoulder in a way that looked accidental but wasn't. She carried a bottle of rose and a plate of chocolate-covered strawberries, like she'd been prepping for this moment all week. Amy opened the door with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. Stephanie, thanks for coming. Stephanie leaned in and kissed her cheek, just a whisper of contact, but enough to make Amy flinch. Thank you for the invitation, she said, smiling sweetly. I've been curious about how this would go. Amy stepped aside, letting her in. I took the wine and caught Stephanie's eyes for just a second too long. Her glance down, then back up, said everything. Tonight, lines blur. The three of us sat in the living room. Stephanie took the armchair by the window, legs crossed, relaxed. Amy perched on the edge of the couch, like she was hosting a seminar. I settled in beside her, close but not touching. Amy had brought note cards. Actual note cards. I thought, she began, we could go over some ground rules. Just to be clear. Stephanie raised an eyebrow. Ground rules. Yes, Amy said, her voice tight. Boundaries. Expectations. What's acceptable? What's off limits? I fought the urge to laugh. She was scrambling, trying to control the chaos she had unleashed. And Stephanie? She was enjoying it. Sure, Stephanie said, smiling. Let's hear them. Amy cleared her throat. Emotional entanglement should be minimized. This is physical exploration, not love. Stephanie leaned forward slightly. So we're not allowed to feel anything? It's just better that way. Stephanie turned to me. Do you agree with that? I met her gaze. I think emotions don't follow rules. Amy stiffened beside me. Stephanie let out a soft chuckle and uncrossed her legs. Well, that's going to be complicated, then. We drank. We nibbled strawberries. Conversation tried to remain polite, but veered off course again and again. Stephanie talked about the poly community. Amy nodded along, pretending to understand. I asked questions. Good ones. The kind that let Stephanie shine. And she did. God, she did. Every laugh of hers seemed to tighten the space between us. Every glance lingered half a second longer than necessary. At one point, she leaned forward to refill her glass, and her hand grazed my knee. A spark. Intentional, unmistakable. Amy saw it. I felt her body tighten next to mine. Why don't you come sit over here? Amy asked suddenly, motioning to the couch. Stephanie smiled, but didn't move. I'm comfortable here. Amy forced a smile. It might help if we're all close. Stephanie sipped her wine, unbothered. We're plenty close. Amy's lips thinned. She'd lost control of the evening, and she knew it. As the night stretched on, the unspoken truth between Stephanie and me bloomed larger than the room could hold. I saw it in the way she toyed with her necklace when I spoke, the way her fingers danced along the rim of her glass. She wasn't trying to seduce me in front of my wife. She already had. At one point, I stood to bring out another bottle of wine. When I passed Stephanie, she tilted her head slightly, just enough that her lips nearly brushed my arm. A tease. A reminder. Amy followed me into the kitchen. Her voice was low and sharp. She's being provocative. She's being herself, I said, opening the wine. This isn't what I meant. I turned slowly. Then what did you mean, Amy? For me to sit quietly while you explore? For me to be the safe husband who lets you play? I didn't mean her, she whispered. But you didn't say that. You said freedom. You said openness. She looked away, jaw clenched. She's manipulating you. She's not the one who brought this into our marriage. That shut her up. When we returned, Stephanie stood, stretching slowly, her arms above her head. The neckline of her dress slipped just enough to catch my breath. She smiled at me, then turned to Amy. Thank you for the wine, she said softly. But I should go. Amy nodded stiffly. Of course. I walked her to the door. As I opened it, she turned, leaned in, and brushed her lips across my cheek. Soft, slow, intentional. Then she whispered, she doesn't know what she started. And with a final smile, she disappeared into the night. Amy sat alone on the couch, staring into her glass like it held answers. Everything's changing, she said, barely above a whisper. I nodded. Yes. And this time, I'm not sitting on the sidelines. The wine made everything softer. Or maybe it just numbed the edge where discomfort used to live. The next time Stephanie came over, there were no note cards. No rules. Amy had stopped pretending she was the one in control, though she still hovered like she was waiting for a chance to take the reins again. We were supposed to be taking things slow. We were supposed to be communicating every step. But chemistry doesn't ask permission. That night, Stephanie arrived in jeans and a loose white blouse that clung in all the wrong, or maybe all the right, places. Her smile was slower than before, her eyes deeper, and I couldn't stop watching the way her fingers played with the stem of her wine glass, like she was drawing patterns with her touch. Amy noticed. She tried, bless her, to steer the conversation. Favorite books, shared podcasts, whether we should go to a poly-friendly mixer next weekend. But Stephanie wasn't listening. Not to her. She was listening to me. We talked about music, old records, the feeling of putting a needle to vinyl and hearing that first crackle. She leaned in close when I spoke, close enough that I could smell the floral trace of her shampoo and the clean, warm scent of her skin underneath. Her knees brushed mine. Once. Then again. Not accident. Not anymore. Amy laughed a little too loud at something that wasn't funny, and Stephanie finally turned to her, kind enough to offer a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You okay? She asked. Amy nodded quickly. Of course. This is great. This is what I wanted. Stephanie raised an eyebrow but didn't push. She didn't need to. Her point had been made. At some point, Amy got up to go to the bathroom. The door down the hall closed, and the energy in the room flipped like a switch. Silence fell, not awkward, but electric. Stephanie set her glass down and turned toward me. And then, without hesitation, she leaned in and kissed me. Not a question, not a whisper. Her lips were warm, soft but firm. Her hand slid to the side of my neck, her fingers brushing the short hair behind my ear. I froze, but only for a second. Then my hand was in her hair, pulling her closer, my mouth opening against hers as the months, maybe years, of suppressed hunger flooded to the surface like a dam breaking. We pulled apart when we heard the toilet flush. Just enough time. Stephanie's lips were flushed, slightly parted, her eyes heavy with knowing. I sat back as Amy returned to the room, and I saw the moment it hit her. The air had changed. She looked between us, my flushed cheeks, Stephanie's contented smirk, and though she said nothing, her smile cracked just slightly. So, Amy said, her voice forced. Who wants dessert? No one answered. The next morning, Amy was cold. Polite, yes, but hollow, like she was mourning something she never thought she'd lose. I kissed her cheek before work, and she turned her head a second too late. It landed near her jaw instead, the same cheek Stephanie had cupped with her hand just hours earlier. That night, Amy cornered me in the kitchen. I saw it, she said. I didn't ask what. I didn't play dumb. You kissed her. She kissed me. I corrected. Her eyes narrowed. And you kissed her back. I held her gaze. What did you expect, Amy? You told me we're allowed to explore. That we could be honest. That's not what I meant, she snapped. Then what did you mean? I asked quietly. She took a step back, wrapping her arms around herself. I thought it would be fun. New. I didn't think you'd actually feel something. I leaned on the counter. You wanted freedom with training wheels. You wanted me home, waiting, while you chased something you didn't have the guts to admit was already happening. Amy's face crumpled, just for a second. I didn't expect you to want her. I didn't expect it either, I admitted. But I do. She looked like she might cry, or scream. Maybe both. Do you still want me? she asked finally, voice barely a whisper. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because the truth would hurt her more than I wanted it to. I want truth, I said. And with Stephanie, I don't have to pretend. Amy closed her eyes like I'd struck her. I don't want her in this house again, she said. That's not your call anymore, I said. She left the kitchen without another word. Stephanie texted me that night. You okay? I stared at the message for a long time. She saw it. Her reply came seconds later. Good. Then, that kiss was long overdue. I sat on the couch, phone still in hand, heart pounding. I thought about her mouth on mine, the heat in her eyes. I thought about how Amy had recoiled, not because she'd been betrayed, but because she had finally seen the reality of her own game reflected back at her. This wasn't her story anymore. It was ours. The house felt different the next morning. Not just quiet, heavy, like a storm had rolled through while we slept and left the walls damp with tension. Amy moved around the kitchen in clipped motions, slamming cupboards a little harder than necessary, pouring coffee with the precision of someone trying not to think about anything at all. I stood in the doorway, watching her, my hands in my pockets. I could still taste Stephanie's kiss from the night before. The softness, the weight, the spark. It wasn't just a moment anymore. It was a shift. You didn't come to bed, Amy said finally, without turning around. I stayed on the couch, I replied. Why? Because the house didn't feel safe. That stopped her. She set the coffee pot down and gripped the counter. Safe? She echoed. You opened the door, Amy, I said quietly. But you didn't like what walked through. She turned to face me, eyes blazing. That's not fair. I wanted us to explore together. I wanted rules, boundaries, safety. No, I said. You wanted freedom for yourself. You wanted to be out there while I stayed here, waiting. You wanted to feel desired while I stayed loyal. That's what you really wanted. Her jaw clenched. You think I don't see what you're doing? You think I don't know you're using her to hurt me? I stepped closer. I didn't plan this. Stephanie and I didn't plan this. But you cracked the foundation. She just walked in. Amy's face twisted. You're disgusting, she whispered. You're acting like some teenager getting back at his girlfriend for flirting with another guy. No, I said softly. I'm acting like a man who's tired of being invisible. She flinched. The silence stretched. Outside, a lawn mower droned faintly down the street. Birds chirped. The normalcy of it all made the moment even sharper. Amy pressed her palms to her eyes and let out a bitter laugh. I thought polyamory would fix this, she said. I thought it would make us exciting again. I didn't think you'd actually. Actually what? I asked. Want her? The honesty of it hit me like a slap. That's what this had always been about. Not freedom. Not exploration. Control. She wanted to be the one with options. She never imagined me having any. She's already walking through that door, Amy, I said quietly. And I'm not going to slam it in her face just to protect your fantasy. Her eyes filled but didn't spill. You don't even know her, she said. I know enough, I said. I know she looks at me like I'm a person, not an obligation. Amy's breath hitched. So what happens now? I don't know, I admitted. But I'm not apologizing for this. You opened the door. We're both walking through. She shook her head slowly. No, you're walking through. I'm not doing this anymore. That's your choice, I said. But you don't get to decide mine. She turned away, bracing herself against the counter. Get out, she whispered. I live here, I said. Then I'll go. She grabbed her purse and keys, moving fast, like she was afraid she'd break if she slowed down. The door slammed behind her. The hours after she left felt surreal. I wandered the house like it belonged to someone else. Every corner held a memory. Our first Christmas in the living room, painting the walls together, the night she told me she was pregnant before miscarrying. We'd built all of this, and now it felt like a set after the actors had left. Stephanie texted just after noon. Heard the thunder from here. You okay? I stared at the message for a while before typing back. She's gone. Her reply came quickly. Good. Maybe now we can stop pretending. I didn't answer. Not yet. Amy came back after sunset. She didn't slam the door this time. She didn't even look at me. She went upstairs without a word, the sound of her feet on the stairs slow and heavy. I stayed on the couch, staring at the dark window, watching the faint glow of Stephanie's kitchen light 2 houses down. I thought about Amy's face when she'd said, I didn't think you'd actually want her. The disbelief, the hurt. And I wondered, did she really think she could build a fire and not get burned? My phone buzzed again. Come over. I didn't move. Not yet. Because this was the moment where everything shifted from idea to reality. Amy had thought polyamory would give her freedom while I stayed safe and faithful. Instead, she'd unleashed something she couldn't contain. And I wasn't sure yet what it would make of me. What started with a kiss became something far less containable. Stephanie didn't play games. She didn't tiptoe around the wreckage of my marriage. She walked through it barefoot, fearless, like it couldn't cut her. And the more time we spent together, the more I realized she wasn't some fling. She wasn't a reaction. She was the clarity I hadn't known I needed. We didn't sleep together right away. We didn't have to. It began with little things, texts that bled into the early morning, inside jokes that Amy never would have understood, glances across the fence that burned like spotlights. She'd lean on the porch railing when I was watering the garden, and the way her eyes dragged over me made me feel 20 again. Desired. Alive. Amy noticed. Of course she did. She stopped bringing up rules. She stopped talking about exploration and started talking about privacy instead. She became brittle, snapping at little things, slamming doors, accusing me of showing off for the neighbors. As if that were the sin. But Stephanie didn't hide. She waved when Amy came home from work. She smiled when we passed her at the mailbox. And when Amy stormed into the house after one of those passive-aggressive encounters, she exploded. "You're flaunting her," she shouted, dropping her purse on the floor. "Do you even care what this looks like?" I stared at her, calm. "You mean what it looks like to the neighborhood? Or what it looks like to you?" Amy's eyes were wild. "Don't twist this. You're making a scene." "No," I said. "I'm finally being honest. You wanted this." "Not like this," she hissed. And there it was again, that familiar refrain. Not like this. She wanted an affair she could intellectualize. She wanted me loyal in principle and disposable in practice. But the moment my heart wandered somewhere real, she panicked. That weekend, we were invited to a neighborhood cookout. Burgers, beers, fake smiles, and forced pleasantries. I thought about skipping it. Amy begged me to go. "Act normal," she said. "Just for one night." Which meant, of course, don't let them see we're falling apart. We arrived late. People were already drunk enough not to care. Stephanie was there, red sundress, barefoot in the grass, laughing with a couple of moms near the drinks table. I watched her from across the yard, and when our eyes met, I felt it again, that pull. Magnetism wrapped in a secret. Amy clung to my arm like she was planting a flag. I let her. For now, we mingled, said all the right things. But the tension between Stephanie and me was thick enough to taste. Every time I looked away, I wanted to look back. Every time she smiled at someone else, my chest tightened with heat I wasn't used to feeling anymore. At some point, she drifted closer. Amy was across the yard talking to Marcy from 2 streets over, and Stephanie moved beside me like a shadow. She didn't say anything at first, just stood close enough that I could smell the soft sweetness of her perfume. Then she said, "You look good tonight." I didn't respond right away. Her fingers brushed mine. It was so subtle, it could have been accidental. But it wasn't. I knew that. And so did she. We didn't speak again for the rest of the night, but the spark had already caught. By the time Amy and I got home, the storm had built in her. I saw it in the way she slammed the door. In the silence, she weaponized. "She was flirting with you," she said finally. "You don't get to be angry," I said. "I'm not angry," she said, voice trembling. "I'm humiliated." I sighed. "No one forced you into this. You wanted polyamory. You said we should open the marriage." "I thought it would bring us closer," she whispered. "Instead, you're disappearing." "No," I said. "I'm just waking up." Stephanie and I didn't have sex the first time we were alone again. We talked. Late into the night. On her porch. In the dark, with wine between us and tension crackling like static. She told me about the years she spent watching us. How she always wondered why Amy looked through me instead of at me. She said she noticed the distance long before I did. That she wanted to reach across the fence and pull me out of the shell I didn't even know I was living in. "I didn't want to be a homewrecker," she said. "But I also knew you weren't home in that house." I looked at her, the lines of her face caught in the glow of a porch light. The honesty in her eyes terrified me more than any infidelity ever could. "You deserve more," she said simply. And I believed her. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't need to. The next time Amy brought up boundaries, it wasn't a conversation. It was a cry for control. "I think we should pause everything," she said. "Just for a few weeks. Recenter. Focus on us." Stephanie's not a phase, I told her. Amy's face went white. I didn't say she was, she said quickly. Yes, you did, I said. You just didn't use those words. She didn't reply. And I knew, in that moment, I wasn't coming back. Stephanie didn't ask for anything. She never pressured me, never demanded. But every time we touched, even by accident, it felt inevitable. And when she finally kissed me again, days later, it wasn't like the first time. It was possession. It was promise. And this time, I didn't stop at a kiss. It was a warm Friday night when everything cracked open. Stephanie had invited me over. Nothing dramatic, no secret texts or sultry promises. Just a casual, come by if you're not busy. Amy had left earlier in the evening, claiming she was meeting a friend for drinks, but I didn't ask who. I didn't care. That part of me, the man who used to track her footsteps like a detective, was gone. Now, I followed the pull of something real. Stephanie's backyard was lit by soft string lights and the dull glow from her kitchen window. She'd set out 2 chairs near the small fire pit, a bottle of red open on the table between them. She wore a plain t-shirt and jeans, nothing seductive, but somehow more intimate than anything she'd worn before. Like this was no longer performance. It was truth. Nice night, she said, handing me a glass. Yeah, I said. Too quiet in my house. She smiled knowingly but didn't press. We sat in silence for a bit, sipping wine, letting the hum of distant crickets fill the gaps. Then she said it. I need to tell you something. I looked over at her. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. She rubbed her thumb along the rim of her glass like she was trying to wear it down to dust. I've loved you for a long time, she said. The words didn't land with a bang. They landed like a truth I'd already suspected but hadn't allowed myself to fully hear. She kept going. I know how it sounds. I know how it looks. But I'm not just caught up in this because Amy gave the green light. I've been watching, waiting. Not in a creepy way, she added quickly, flashing a nervous smile. But in a you-deserved-better kind of way. I didn't speak. I just listened. You remember that block party 2 years ago, she said. You brought that casserole Amy had made, and she spent the whole time ignoring you while flirting with some guy from her work. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I remember. I watched you that day, she said. And I saw it. The way you laughed just to fill the space. The way you looked at her when she wasn't looking back. And I realized you were one of those guys. One of the rare ones who doesn't cheat, who doesn't lie, who stays. Even when he's starving. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not pain. Recognition. You were dying in that house, she whispered. And I hated watching it. You waited a long time, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I thought it would never happen, she admitted. I thought maybe I'd just always be your neighbor. The one who smiled too long and said good morning too brightly. But when she brought up polyamory, I knew. Knew what? That she was about to lose you. I sat back, staring into the fire. The flames danced against the rim of my glass. Stephanie leaned forward, elbows on her knees. I didn't steal you, you know. I didn't plan this. I know, I said. And I did. She reached out, her fingers brushing mine. I'm not trying to replace her. But I want to be someone who sees you. Who chooses you. That was the moment everything shifted again. Not with lust. With honesty. I looked at her and saw the years behind her words. The way she'd always stood a little too close, laughed a little too easily, lingered when she didn't have to. It hadn't been coincidence. It hadn't been timing. It had been love, quiet, patient, and waiting for a window that Amy accidentally opened. I took her hand in mine. I believe you, I said. She leaned in, and this time when we kissed, it wasn't explosive. It was soft. Final. Like a door clicking shut behind us. Later, we lay on her couch, legs tangled, her head resting on my chest. The fire had burned down, and the only light came from the lamp in the corner. What happens now? She asked. I don't know, I said honestly. You still married? Legally, I said, but not where it matters. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, if she hadn't suggested polyamory, would we still be here? I didn't answer right away. I don't think I'd have had the courage, I admitted. Stephanie nodded, almost to herself. Funny how betrayal opens doors. Yeah, I said. And how love walks through them. When I got home, the house was dark. Amy was asleep, or pretending to be. I stood in the hallway for a while, staring at the door to our bedroom. I thought about the nights I used to stand there, afraid of saying the wrong thing, desperate to get back to the version of her who had once looked at me like I mattered. But that version of her was gone. And the version of me who needed her was gone too. It was a Sunday afternoon when Amy made her move. The morning had been quiet, almost eerily so. She hadn't slammed any cabinets, hadn't offered any snide remarks about Stephanie, and hadn't muttered bitterly about the sanctity of marriage. She just floated, like a woman lost in her own house. I'd come to recognize that calm not as peace, but as strategy. And I was right. She walked into the living room wearing jeans and a soft sweater I hadn't seen in years. Her hair was done, not dramatic, but intentional, fresh. She looked good, and she knew it. "There's someone I want you to meet," she said. I looked up from my coffee. "A friend." She hesitated, just long enough. "Someone I've been talking to. From work." I set the mug down. Him. "His name's Daniel," she said. "We've been talking a while. I think it would be healthy for you to see it's not just you and Stephanie who are moving forward." I almost laughed, not because of jealousy, but because of how transparent it was. She was trying to level the field, like introducing me to this man would somehow make us even, as if love, messy, flawed, raw love, was a math equation. "When?" I asked. She looked surprised I didn't resist. "Tonight. He's coming over for dinner." I gave her a long look. "That's what this is now? Dinner with affair partners?" Her lips tightened. "Don't call him that. We haven't done anything. Not yet." That made me raise a brow. Not for lack of trying. She crossed her arms. "You're one to talk." "I'm not pretending anymore," I said. "Neither am I," she shot back. He arrived just before 7. Daniel looked exactly how I expected. Polished, fit, that bland brand of attractive that comes from curated haircuts and self-satisfied smiles. The kind of guy who probably flirted with the interns and called it mentorship. He brought wine. Of course. "Nice place," he said as he stepped inside, eyes scanning the living room like he was evaluating property. "Amy's told me a lot about you." I smiled politely. "Has she?" He nodded, oblivious to the weight in my voice. "She said you've been going through a transitional period." I nearly choked on the laugh I tried to suppress. "That what she's calling it?" Amy shot me a warning glare from across the room. We sat at the dinner table, the three of us. If there was tension, Daniel didn't feel it. He smiled and made charming little jokes, asking about our neighborhood, our yard, our past vacations. He was trying so hard to seem relevant, but he didn't belong in that house. Amy tried to direct the conversation, to make it seem natural, but I could see it. Her eyes darting between us, gauging my reactions, desperate for some flicker of jealousy. I gave her none, because there was nothing there to feel. She leaned into him once, laughing at a joke he made about yoga instructors, and I saw it then, what this really was. A performance. She wasn't trying to build something with him. She was trying to get a reaction out of me. When Daniel stepped outside to take a phone call, an emergency from work, Amy rounded on me. "You're being an asshole," she hissed. "Because I'm not impressed?" I said. "Because you're sitting there judging me like you're some martyr." "I'm not judging you," I said. "I'm watching you play a game I already finished." She went silent. "I've met someone who sees me, Amy. Really sees me. And the guy you're playing house with? He's just here because you hate the silence." Her face paled, but I wasn't done. "I loved you," I said. "For years, I held on, hoping the version of you I married would come back. But now, I don't want her. And I sure as hell don't want this." She looked like she might cry or scream, but she didn't. She just stood there, stunned by the clarity. Daniel came back in, all smiles. "Everything okay?" I stood up. "Dinner's over." Amy opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Daniel glanced between us. "Should I?" "Yeah," I said. "You should." She didn't speak to me for 3 days after that. I didn't mind. The silence was honest. Stephanie came by late Tuesday night. She didn't ask questions. She just slid her arms around me as I opened the door, kissed me like the world outside didn't matter, and held my hand like we'd been together for years. We sat on the porch again, drinking tea instead of wine this time, and I told her everything. About Daniel. About Amy's desperation. Stephanie shook her head slowly. She thought bringing another man into the picture would scare you back. I think she thought it would make her feel wanted again, I said. And did it? No, I said. It just made her look hollow. Stephanie leaned into my side. She doesn't realize the war's already over. She started it, I said. She just didn't like losing. That night, in Stephanie's bed, I realized something else. Amy had always wanted the illusion of freedom, but she didn't want the vulnerability that came with it. She wanted options, not consequences. But with Stephanie, there were no illusions. There was no performance. Just skin against skin, breath for breath. Sex that didn't need to prove anything, just to connect, deep and slow and honest. Afterward, she ran her fingers through my hair and said, "You're finally here." And she was right. I wasn't just escaping. I was arriving. It didn't take long for the neighborhood to catch on. At first, it was subtle. Too many glances, the quiet hush of voices that stopped just as I walked past. The sort of politeness people drape over gossip like a tablecloth, hoping it hides the mess underneath. It started with Stephanie's car. She'd stopped parking in her driveway. Instead, she began pulling into mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. And maybe it was. After all, she spent more nights with me than at her own place now. But to everyone else on our quaint, manicured street, it was a signal. A flag planted in the middle of domestic war. At the next block party, potluck style, folding chairs lined across someone's lawn, I could feel it. The shift. People smiled, but too tightly. Said hello, but with their heads tilted, trying to piece the puzzle together behind their eyes. It was Marcy from 2 doors down who finally broke the illusion. We were all standing around a tray of deviled eggs when she said, too loudly, "So, Stephanie, are you living with him now?" Stephanie, to her credit, didn't flinch. She just smiled, sweet as ever. "Not officially." Marcy blinked. "Oh, I just wasn't sure, with your car always there." Stephanie sipped her lemonade. "We're just enjoying each other's company." I nearly choked on mine. Her delivery was flawless. Amy wasn't there that day. She'd stopped showing up to neighborhood events entirely. Whether out of shame or spite, I couldn't say. But her absence was its own kind of message. And people filled the blanks in their own delicious, exaggerated ways. One afternoon, I caught Steve, my next-door neighbor, lingering by the fence. He was trimming his hedge, or pretending to, when he leaned over and said, "So, things really went sideways, huh?" I didn't bother pretending I didn't know what he meant. "Yeah, you could say that." He nodded. "My wife says your ex was asking for trouble." I arched a brow. "She said that?" "Yeah," he said. "This poly stuff, it sounds sexy, until someone gets hurt." I didn't reply. Not because I disagreed, but because I wasn't sure what to say. Stephanie wasn't some wild detour. She was where the road had always been leading, whether I knew it or not. But Amy? She was unraveling. I saw her one morning through the window, standing in our kitchen, arms folded, staring out at the backyard like she was looking at a ghost. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care anymore. That day, she texted me. "Everyone's laughing at me. Hope you're happy." I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, but because there was nothing left to say that wouldn't sound like salt in an open wound. She had lit the match. I had simply walked out of the fire. That evening, Stephanie and I went for a walk. It was warm, with that faint edge of fall creeping into the breeze. We passed a group of neighbors gathered on someone's porch, drinks in hand, laughter a little too loud. One of them elbowed the other as we passed. Stephanie leaned into me. "Everyone knows," she said. "Yeah. You care?" I looked over at her. She was glowing, hair messy from the wind, cheeks flushed from wine and laughter. She looked free. "No," I said. "Do you?" She grinned. "Not even a little." At the next corner, we passed Mrs. Becker, the oldest widow on the block. She watched us from her garden, pruners in hand, and as we passed, she said, "You two make a nice pair." Stephanie smiled. "Thank you." The woman nodded, then went back to her roses. Some people see the truth, even through the noise. Later that week, I saw Amy at the grocery store. We reached for the same carton of eggs. She froze. I didn't. "Hey," I said, calm. She looked exhausted. Pale. Like sleep had become a luxury she no longer afforded herself. "Do they say it to your face?" she asked. "Who?" "The neighbors." I shrugged. "They whisper. That's what they do." She looked away. "They think I'm the villain." I didn't correct her. Her eyes found mine again, tired and small. "You think I'm the villain." I shook my head. "I think you played with fire. And I think you're angry that it didn't burn the way you expected." She said nothing. Then, quietly, "Was I that bad?" I paused. "No," I said. "You just stopped seeing me." A breath hitched in her throat, but she didn't cry. Amy didn't cry anymore. She was past tears, past rage. She was hollow. And I realized then, it wasn't about Stephanie. It never had been. It was about a slow erosion. 1,000 days of not touching, not hearing, not caring. And when she suggested opening the marriage, it was already broken. She just didn't want to admit it. When I got home, Stephanie was on the porch, reading. She looked up, smiled, and without a word, reached for my hand as I climbed the steps. That night, I lay in bed with her, the windows open to the sounds of crickets and the far-off murmur of a television from someone's house. I thought about what the neighborhood might be saying now. I didn't care. Let them whisper. This wasn't scandal. It was freedom. It happened on a Thursday. The weather had turned, warm and heavy with late summer heat, the kind that makes everything feel like it's on the verge of breaking. I came home from Stephanie's just after sunset. The sky was bruised purple, and the air was thick with the hum of insects and lawn sprinklers. Amy was waiting for me. Not in the kitchen. Not on the porch. No, she was in the living room, sitting perfectly still on the couch, like some ghost that had refused to leave. Her face was blank, but her eyes, they were thunder. "Hey," I said cautiously, stepping inside. "Don't," she snapped, before I could get another word out. She stood, arms trembling, jaw locked like she'd been rehearsing this in her head for hours. "I am done pretending, done being polite, done acting like this is normal." I set my keys on the counter. "No one asked you to pretend." She barked a laugh, brittle and bitter. "That's the problem. No one asked me anything. You just went ahead and made your choice." I looked at her calmly. "You made your choice first." Her nostrils flared. "Don't twist this on me." "I'm not twisting anything, Amy. You're just mad the game didn't go the way you scripted it." She stepped forward, her hands clenched. This wasn't supposed to be a free-for-all. I wanted rules. I wanted structure. You and I were supposed to explore together, not you running off to play house with her while I got left behind like some bitter ex-wife. "Funny," I said, coming from the woman who had Daniel over for dinner like we were doing auditions. "That was different." I tilted my head. "Because he didn't mean anything to you?" Her face flushed. "Exactly," I said. "You brought him here to provoke me, to feel desired. You didn't even like him. But Stephanie, that's what scares you. Because it's real." She shook her head violently. "You're humiliating me." "No," I said. "You're humiliating yourself, Amy. You opened the door, thinking I'd stand in the hallway like a good boy while you went out and had your fun. And when I walked through it too, you panicked." "You don't love her," she spat. "I do." The words hit her like a slap. "You love Stephanie?" she whispered. "Yes." She stared at me, jaw slack. For a second, I thought she might throw something. But then something shifted. Her shoulders sank. Her voice dropped to something more hollow than angry. "She was always waiting, wasn't she?" I didn't deny it. "Jesus," Amy muttered, laughing dryly. "And I was so worried about appearances. About the neighbors. About being the progressive, open-minded wife who didn't want to be boring." "You wanted a performance," I said. "You didn't want growth. You wanted permission." Her eyes snapped back to mine. "And what did you want?" "I wanted to be seen." We stood there in silence. The kind of silence that fills every room, every drawer, every old photo still tucked in a frame no one bothers dusting anymore. Then Stephanie walked in. I hadn't heard her car. She must have parked on the street. Her voice called gently. "Door was open. Hope that's okay." The air snapped taut. Amy turned, her face pale but sharp. "Of course it's okay. Why wouldn't it be? It's not like this is my house anymore." Stephanie froze just inside the doorway, sensing the tension instantly. "I can come back." "No," I said. "Stay." Amy laughed again, dry and full of venom. "Perfect. Let's all play house together." Stephanie stood tall. "I'm not here to take anything from you." Amy turned on her. "You already did." Stephanie's voice didn't waver. "No. I took what he gave me. What you stopped valuing a long time ago." Amy's eyes narrowed. "You're a predator." Stephanie didn't even blink. "And you're a hypocrite." Amy's mouth opened, then closed. For once, she didn't have a comeback. "This wasn't about polyamory," Stephanie continued, stepping closer. "This was about escape. You didn't want to fix your marriage. You wanted an exit that made you feel powerful. You wanted him to stay miserable while you experimented." Amy's fists clenched, but she said nothing. "I'm not a prop in your guilt," Stephanie added. "And I'm not an affair. I'm a woman who loves him." I didn't stop her. Every word she spoke rang true. Amy finally turned to me, voice trembling. "So that's it? You just walk away? After everything?" I nodded. "Yes. After 10 years? Especially after 10 years." Her face crumpled, but she didn't cry. Just nodded. Once. Then turned and walked out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled on the walls. Stephanie looked at me. You okay? I nodded slowly. No more pretending, I said. She came to me, wrapping her arms around my chest, her head resting against my shoulder. For the first time, I didn't feel torn. I didn't feel like a man navigating betrayal or picking sides. I just felt free and chosen. The marriage was over. Not with screaming or paperwork, though that would come, but in the quiet finality of Amy's footsteps as she left the house one last time. She didn't say goodbye, didn't look back. The slam of the front door had said everything for her. I didn't chase her, because for the first time in years, I knew exactly where I was going. It was just after 10. The moon was high, pale and watchful. The neighborhood was still. Every porch light dimmed, every window shuttered, except for one, Stephanie's. I stood at the edge of the lawn, breathing in the cool, still air. The distance between our front doors had never felt so short, or so final. My life, our life, had been built behind me. But what was ahead? It wasn't just desire anymore. It wasn't even revenge. It was truth. I took the first step. Her porch light was on, as if she already knew I'd come. I knocked once. She opened the door almost immediately. There was no surprise in her face. No dramatic greeting. Just warmth, like she'd been waiting in that quiet certainty only a woman who's truly loved can carry. Hey, she said softly. Hey. We stood there for a moment, taking each other in. Then I said it, plainly, finally. I'm not going back. A slow smile pulled at the corners of her mouth. Not gloating, not triumphant, just real. I know. She stepped aside. I walked in. The house smelled like lavender and something baking. Soft music played in the background, barely audible over the thrum of my pulse. It wasn't dressed up. It wasn't prepared for company. It was just home. Her home. Our home. Maybe, if I was brave enough to admit it. We sat on the couch. No rush. No lust fogging the moment. Just the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. Stephanie reached for my hand. You look lighter. I feel lighter. She nodded. You should. I turned to her. You were right. Amy didn't want freedom. She wanted a leash. Longer, maybe, but still attached. When I let go, she didn't know what to do. She never thought you'd leave, Stephanie said. She thought you'd orbit her forever. But I was already drifting, I said. Even before she said the word polyamory. I think I left long before I walked out. Stephanie leaned into me. And now, I said, I want to be here. With someone who didn't need permission to love me. She smiled against my shoulder. You don't need to prove anything. Not to me. We made love that night. Slow, reverent, no urgency or apology. It wasn't just about bodies. It was about being seen. She touched me like I wasn't broken. Kissed me like there was no one else in the world she'd rather know this closely. Every breath shared between us felt like the closing of an old wound. And when we lay there afterward, limbs tangled and heart steady, she whispered, You don't have to be anything but yourself here. I didn't know that was still an option, I said. She smiled. It always was. You just needed someone who never asked you to disappear. The next morning, the sun rose slow and golden through her bedroom windows. I made coffee in her kitchen like I'd done it 1,000 times before. She came in, barefoot, hair a mess, smiling like we hadn't just rearranged our entire futures. Good morning, she said, taking the mug from my hands. I could get used to this, I said. Then do. There was no ceremony to it. No dramatic declarations. But in that kitchen, we made a choice. Not just for the moment, but for whatever came next. Word spread quickly. By the weekend, the whispers had become full-blown speculation. Marcy asked if I was staying there now. Steve made some offhand comment about domestic mergers. Someone, probably Becker, left a single note in my mailbox with no return address. Be happy. Life's too short for anything else. Stephanie just laughed it off. They'll get used to it, she said. They'll talk. They were always going to talk, she said. Let them. What matters is that you're not hiding anymore. And I wasn't. Not from myself. Not from my past. Not from love. Amy filed the divorce paperwork 3 weeks later. We didn't fight over assets. We didn't scream. We sat in the lawyer's office like two people quietly folding the clothes of a dead marriage. I hope you're happy, she said, voice low. I already am, I said. She nodded. Not angry. Just resigned. And that was the last real thing we ever said to each other. I moved in with Stephanie officially a month later. It wasn't about rushing. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about choosing. Choosing love that had waited patiently. Choosing the woman who didn't offer escape, but sanctuary. The neighborhood eventually adjusted. The whispers dulled. The looks faded. And in their place, a quiet understanding settled in. This wasn't scandal. This was survival. And beyond survival, rebirth. Some nights, when the house is quiet and Stephanie is asleep beside me, I think about how it all started. A dinner. A sentence. An experiment. She wanted to expand our horizons. And I suppose we did. But the horizon wasn't where she thought it was. It wasn't another man. It wasn't a safe little flirtation she could control. It was a woman 2 doors down who had loved me silently for years. And now, in the stillness of her arms, in the warmth of a home that was built not from expectations but truth, I finally see it clearly. Amy cracked the door. Stephanie opened it wide. And I, finally, walked through it.